Clearing close in the forest you'll find a fabulous banquet, a fairy ball. If you close your eyes and you open your mind, the veil disappears and you'll see it all.
Hi my angels, it's Hailey Reese, and for today's video we are finally going to be diving into the absolutely shocking, disturbing, and horrific case and crimes of the Papin sisters. Now, when I did research into the terrifying case of the silent twins, the horrific case of the Papin sisters was one that I had done some research into as well. I really wanted to share this with you guys for quite some time now, but a lot of research had to go into today's video because there is so many details leading up to the crime that they would eventually commit, which is just, to be entirely honest with you, the most disturbing crime scene and crime I have ever heard of in my entire life. It is that bad. So I wanted to make sure that I got their backstory as accurate, on point, and full of details as possible, so that maybe we could try to debunk how it went from one extreme to just something out of a horror film that you wouldn't even want to watch, ever. So without further ado, I am just going to dive into this case because, like I said, there is a lot that goes on with it, and I want to make sure to get it all into this video. So the Papin sisters came from a very troubled family in Le Mans, France. Their mother's name was Clémence and their father's name was Gustave. And kind of right off the get-go of their relationship, there were a ton of rumors circulating claiming that Clémence was having an affair with her boss and cheating on Gustave. However, Gustave really loved Clémence, and he decided to let love rule and to stay with her throughout all of these rumors and this talk. So after getting pregnant, the two of them got married, and in February of 1901, Amelia Papin was born. But throughout all of this, it was always kind of in the back of Gustave's mind whether or not Clémence really was having an affair with her boss, so he decided to accept a job in a different town. This was about 2 years after Amelia was born, and when he announced to Clémence that he was going to accept a job in a different town, she completely freaked out. She said she would rather commit suicide than leave Le Mans, France, and this just really furthered his suspicions about, you know, whether or not she was having an affair, because if you really loved who you were with, if you loved your family, you would follow them kind of wherever their job took them if that was a possibility. And she was just really dead set on staying in Le Mans, France. However, she did eventually come to her senses, and they all up and moved to a different town. Now, the relationship between Clémence and Gustave was said to be extremely loveless. Apparently, Clémence was extremely emotionally unstable. She showed no affection to either her husband or their daughter Amelia, and quite frankly, she was said to have been a very unstable and unfitting mother. Right from the get-go, people said that she just really didn't show any love, affection, support, any of that to her daughter, and they really didn't set a good example for Amelia to begin with, because throughout all of this, Gustave eventually turned to alcohol. Now, when Amelia was about 10 years old, information surfaced claiming that her father had raped her, and like I told you guys, Clémence was a very unstable woman to begin with, and I guess she really took this news horribly and blamed Amelia for having seduced her father, which is just absolutely horrific considering she was 10 years old. And I mean, anytime that anybody blames somebody for rape, it just enrages me. It's never the victim's fault. But I guess in turn, at 10 years old, she sent Amelia off to a Catholic orphanage. Now, later in life, Amelia Papin joined the convent and became a nun. So in 1905, Christine Papin was born, and right from infancy, they actually gave her to her father Gustave's sister, who was more than happy to accept Christine. So Christine remained with her aunt for 7 years of her life, and then she was placed into a Catholic orphanage. Now, Christine actually wanted to follow in Amelia's footsteps and join the convent to also become a nun, but her mother would not allow it as she wanted to gain, or she wanted financial gain from her daughter, so she decided to place her daughter into employment. So her mother placed her into employment as soon as possible, and she was said to be an incredible cook and a really, really hard worker. However, her employers would sometimes say that she would at times lack a lot of respect and had a lot of disconnect with them. She wasn't always the most respectful. You know, sometimes she would be really rude and just lack respect in general, but she was a great employee and an awesome, awesome cook. Now in 1911, so going back, I kind of went a little forward in Christine's story, but going back in 1911, Leah Papin was born, and she was the youngest of their 3 girls. So there was Amelia, Christine, and Leah Papin. Now evaluations indicated that Leah Papin was actually of slightly lower intelligence than her sister Christine Papin, and she was really, really, really introverted, quiet, and just really kept to herself. And straight from infancy, she was actually given to her mother's brother until he died, and then she was actually placed into a religious orphanage as well until the age of 15. Now, one quick thing that I really want to say is that I don't quite understand why Clémence Papin continued to have children, as she just kept giving them away from infancy. But I mean, it was definitely a different time, so I'm sure that it was just, you know, she kept having kids. Now in 1926, Christine and Leah Papin actually landed a job together in Le Mans, France, and it was actually a live-in job in the home of the Lancelin family. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. Lancelin is how I believe it will be pronounced. But everybody pronounces it differently in all the different research and documentaries I've looked into. So they landed a domestic job, live-in, with the Lancelin family. The family consisted of a retired lawyer, his wife, and their adult daughter. So Christine served as the family cook and Leah served as the family maid. They were known to be extremely hardworking. They were known to be kind of model, you know, housekeepers and cooks and things like that. And overall, they really followed what they were supposed to as far as what was proper etiquette for them. The only thing that people noticed was that they were extremely antisocial. Any opportunity that they had, when they had lunch breaks or they had downtime, they would revert to their rooms by themselves, and they really just wanted to spend time with each other. They didn't really want to socialize with anybody else. They were very, very introverted and within their own world. Now here's where things get extremely dark, twisted, and absolutely disturbing. Now in 1933, the Papin sisters had been working for this family for 6 years. Christine Papin was 27 years old and Leah Papin was 21 years old, which is a year younger than me. And it's absolutely insane to think about and just put into perspective that somebody a year younger than me was capable of doing this. On February 2nd, 1933, Miss Lancelin and her daughter arrived home to a very, very dark house. Now, bear in mind, you know, the Lancelin family was said to have been very, very good to the girls, and the only thing that was kind of where they shared differences, so to speak, was the fact that Miss Lancelin had a very particular way of how she wanted her house to be clean. She would sometimes go around with white gloves to look for dust, or, you know, she would really want to criticize and make sure that they were doing a good job. But overall, they were said to have treated the girls very, very well. But on this particular day, she and her daughter arrived home and Christine snapped. At the top of the stairs on the first floor, Christine lunged at Genevieve, their adult daughter, and ripped her eyes out with her fingers. Then Leah joined in on the struggle and grabbed Miss Lancelin, while Christine ordered Leah to rip her eyes out. While she did this, Christine ran to go and grab a hammer and proceeded back, where they would therefore slash and just absolutely like beat these 2 women to be completely unrecognizable. They bashed their heads in, they sliced them, they had ripped their eyes out. They were completely unrecognizable by the time they were found. And detectives and experts actually estimate that this whole ordeal lasted around 30 minutes. Now, 30 minutes is an extremely long time. Like, this type of rage is just unthinkable. Like, to rip somebody's eyeballs out with your fingers to bash their heads in, to slice their legs. It's just so unthinkable and disturbing. Mr. Lassaline and his son-in-law actually arrived home between 6:30 and 7 p.m. to a locked, bolted door, but they knew that somebody was home inside, so they decided to actually call the authorities to come and help them get within the house and figure out what was going on. When the police entered the home, the scene was just unthinkable. There were teeth scattered all across the floor. Genevieve's eye lay upon the top stair. They found her other eye underneath her body. Their heads were just completely unrecognizable. You would not be able to tell who they were if you didn't already know. Hidden in the folds of Miss Lassaline's scarf was both of her eyeballs. It was just a scene like out of a horror film. I'm going to insert the police report picture. It's black and white and it's hard to see, so it shouldn't be too disturbing, but it definitely is very disturbing. This is public domain, and it is just a very horrific thing. So after the police discovered the bodies, they immediately began to search the entire house. Their initial reaction and immediate fear was that the killer had done the exact same thing to the Papin sisters. So they immediately went upstairs to go and check on them, where they saw a dim light protruding from underneath their door, and their door was locked. So they retrieved a locksmith, and when the locksmith opened the door to the girls' bedroom, to their surprise, the two girls were in bed together. Some sources say they were within their robes, some say they were completely naked, but next to them was a bloody hammer with pieces of hair within it. Could you imagine? Like, that's just so disturbing. It makes my stomach hurt. So the police immediately asked them what happened, and the sisters immediately confessed the crime. So the police arrested the sisters. They took them both into custody, obviously. And strangely enough, they reported that the way that Christine interacted with Leah kind of insinuated that they had some sort of sexual relationship together. So the court appointed 3 doctors to examine the sisters and essentially come to a consensus as to whether or not they were psychologically insane. Christine really showed a lot of signs of disconnect from everything and anything within the world other than Leah. However, after the doctors really did all of their evaluations and their psychosis, they kind of came to the conclusion that Christine's relationship with Leah was of a devoted family member and was not of a sexual relationship as the police had suspected when they interacted. Now, on the contrary, it kind of came forward that Leah Papin really looked to Christine Papin as a motherly figure. She really looked up to her a ton, and so her devotion to her was crazy. And honestly, their relationship was unbelievably and unusually close, but I mean, given their history, it makes sense. However, all of the doctors and medical professionals came to the conclusion that neither one of the girls were mentally ill, that they were completely coherent of what they had done, they were comprehensive of the severity of their actions, and there was no mental diagnosis that would explain their actions, which just makes it all the more creepy and terrifying. So once the trial took place, it took only 40 minutes to come to a conclusion as to what the girls would be sentenced to. Obviously, they found Christine and Leah Papin guilty. Leah received a 10-year prison sentence, while Christine Papin was sentenced to guillotine, so she was sentenced to the death sentence and the death penalty. However, it would later just turn out to life in prison. Now, without her sister, Christine Papin did not do well in prison whatsoever. She became extremely depressed, unresponsive. She eventually stopped eating. They would eventually transfer her into a mental institution. However, she continued to be depressed, to be disconnected, and to starve herself until she would eventually die in May of 1937. So she did not do well once she was away from her sister. Now, Leah Papin gave great behavior during her sentence and her time, and she only served 8 out of the 10 years, which, if you really think about how disturbing and disgusting this crime is that she was a part of, it blows my mind that she served 8-year sentence. That like 8 years was all she served for having ripped eyeballs out and destroyed the heads of innocent people who did not deserve it, people who were giving you a job, essentially. In 1941, Leah Papin became a free woman, and she went to go live with her mother under a hiatus and a different name. Now, some people say that Leah Papin died in 1982, while others say that she actually suffered a really bad stroke and was completely incoherent and actually died in 2001. I'm not entirely sure when she passed away, as all the different sources kind of state different things, but but needless to say, she had essentially only served 8 out of her 10 years in prison, went on a hiatus, and eventually passed away as well. So that's kind of what happened to the sisters. Now, as far as why the Papin sisters murdered so disturbingly, absolutely nobody knows. Like I said, they were examined by medical professionals and they were not deemed insane. They were actually deemed very, very sane. I mean, their history and what they went through is obviously really difficult. When I kind of examine their case, it kind of brings me into the fact that maybe besides each other, they'd never really felt true love, and they had a true love. They never really felt love, and therefore maybe perhaps they became disconnected from reality and didn't form any sort of healthy relationships outside of the relationship that they had created when they were reunited and put into the same job together. It's obviously no excuse to murder, especially to that degree. I know tons of people who have came from really, really dark childhoods and situations and decided to become better individuals because of it and thrived throughout life. So it's never an excuse to say that how somebody was brought up would be the result of such a horrific crime, but it is really, really difficult to come to a conclusion as to why they would do it. Some people speculate that it's because they were of lower class than the family that they were working for, and that the family didn't feed them the same food or treat them the same way, and they were very, very angry at life, at their situations, and decided to murder them, which, I mean, it doesn't sound so, well, it does sound insane, but it doesn't sound so improbable. Well, others say that they knew the family personally, they knew the girls, and they were treated very, very well, other than her being really, really particular on how she wanted her home cleaned and the meals that she wanted cooked. So nobody has been able to figure it out. The girls never came forward and said why they committed such a horrible crime, but it definitely shocked people and continues to shock people. What do you guys think of this particular case and crime? What do you think the motive for the Papin sisters could have been? Obviously, there is no motive that is present or strong enough to commit such a disgusting and disturbing crime. But I mean, in any sort of true crime situation, I'm somebody who doesn't want to believe that people would just do this for no good reason. So I really try to analyze the situation and think of what could have caused it. But regardless, it is an absolutely horrific crime and a terrifying case. Well, you guys, that is it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I tried to cram as much information as I possibly could into it for you guys. It's very difficult with cases like this when there are so many articles, so many documentaries on it, to narrow down the most important key points of this story and this case. But I really do try to do my absolute best with it, so I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you guys are new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed but you do enjoy my videos, please, please, please click that subscribe button, join our family, and turn on your post notifications only if you like my content, because YouTube doesn't show things in chronological order and I don't want you guys to miss my content if you do enjoy it. And on that note of enjoying it, please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. I've just said enjoy it like a million times, but if you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up, because it takes a lot of time to research and it just means the world when I know that you guys enjoy my content. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness, and until next time, I love you.